everyone, and thanks for joining us today. So today we're going to be talking about how to validate and scale your retail strategy. What works in one store, region, or format doesn't always work in another. And the challenge for most retailers isn't just setting a strategy, it's knowing whether it's working before you scale it as well. So today I'm joined by Gareth Johns, our Chief Customer and Data Officer here at TruRating, and Bill Pugh, Senior Director of Store Operations at Paradies Lagardere. Bill brings more than 30 years of retail and operations experience and very luckily has his retirement coming up. So we're especially pleased to have the chance to have him here today to hear his perspective. So thanks so much, Bill. And Gareth, thanks as well, of course, for joining.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Bill, I think if you're happy with me to start with you, I'd love to start with the store format. So how differently do you think about strategy across the different types of stores that you have?
Yeah, so we definitely have to kind of consider it because we basically have two different types of stores. Our typical travel essentials stores where you get, in an airport setting, and then you have specialty brands. So think about we have Brighton and Brooks Brothers and Pandora and those things. So we have to kind of think about what we're doing, and the questions that we're asking, different across the formats.
Thanks, Bill. And Gareth, from the data side, what changes when you look at the different store environments?
I think probably the biggest thing is kind of where you're focused on growing your revenue. So to Bill's point about the types of stores that he was talking about there, if you're thinking about like a travel essential store and there's a customer coming into the airport, then most of them are focused on getting what they need and getting out again. And the opportunity is to convince that customer or show that customer a couple of extra items so that they either trade up to a slightly more kind of premium product within there, or more likely so that they add another item to their basket. So you're really focused on increasing average basket size. Whereas you think about the specialty stores that Bill was talking about, then there you're focused much more on, I think, conversion. And from a staff point of view, the behaviors and the strategies that you would use to either maximize basket size versus maximize conversion might be slightly differently. So we often think about what's the thing that you're really trying to drive and the behavior you're trying to get to in a store, and then we design our questions accordingly for that particular aspect. So yeah, we definitely think about the stores differently from a question point of view as well.
Perfect. And Bill, when you introduce a new service or format, what is it that you're trying to understand the most early on?
Well, so and I think that TruRating has really been very helpful for us because we really did not get a good feedback on the customer experience, in our stores. It was very loosely done, mystery shops, a couple of times a year, but not across kind of all stores, in there. And it really didn't have just kind of a good sense of what was going on in our stores. Our business was good. We've been awarded recognized in the industry for our customer service. So it's 29 straight years we've been voted the retailer with the highest regards for customer service. So we know that we're doing a good job. Our business, is good, but we still really weren't getting the information, that we needed to say, well, how are we doing? And across all those different store types, across all the different airports that we operate in, it's like, what's the good, bad, indifferent? What things can we focus on? We did it through our own observations, both our field observations or corporate executive kind of observations, and then we would make decisions from it. What we're able to do now is through the questions that the TruRating team kind of helped us to kind of put together, for us, is to look at it and actually see, what's happening and what we're doing and what we're doing well in and where our opportunities are.
Amazing. Thanks, Bill. And 29 years, that's pretty phenomenal. So congratulations to you and the team. Gareth, I guess from your side, how can retailers use customer insights to really validate what kinds of changes they make early on?
I think there's effectively two ways you can look at it in terms of a change or a new initiative that you roll out within a store. you can either try and focus very much on that single initiative and say, you know, does somebody like the new way you've laid the store out, or have they noticed the new promotion or the whatever it might be. You can be very specific in that way, or you can think more about what was the point of the initiative that I've just rolled out? Was it to make checkout quicker? Was it to, you know, make a bigger deal of value perception and get my value perception to be improved by highlighting pricing? Was it to make sure that the shelves are stocked better so that stockability becomes less of an issue? And then you can almost have that kind of more outcome-based question or outcome-based thing that you're going to measure. And then you really need to be measuring it before you make the change, during the change, and then after the change to really see, did it have a lasting impact on how customers perceive the store and the store experience? So I think generally that sort of second approach works better, because you're really focused on not just, you know, what people say about something, but almost, well, what does that do in terms of their view of the store overall, which is going to be much more those things about, you know, could I get everything I needed? You know, did I feel welcome in the store? Could I see, was the pricing all clear? Those sort of general kind of foundational parts of retail that you are then able to attribute to whatever initiative you've rolled out, and then link that obviously back to all the sales data to say customers noticed and they valued what we did, and actually it showed up at the bottom line as well.
Perfect, thank you. And Bill, when you're introducing something new, I'd love to understand what process you go through before deciding whether it's ready to scale or not.
Yeah, so you know, much the way that any business would kind of go through it, you've got a pilot. We have to kind of test it, make sure that it works, and you do it in a couple of different ways. You know, one, you want to kind of look at, you want to get kind of enough of a scope of different stores, concepts, stuff in here that it gives you the correct read for it, also across regions of the country, including, you know, we operate in Canada as well. So what works in the US doesn't necessarily work in Canada. So we have to take that into consideration, you know, as well as we do it. And then probably the bigger part of it is that there's got to be a reason for us that we're doing this. You know, whatever the kind of initiative is or technology that we're trying to do. And you've got to get buy-in from those field teams, because much like any other kind of retail or hospitality business, you know, the field team takes a lot of direction from the head office, you know, into it. And in some cases, they're going, it's like, is this just busy work, or is this something that we really need to do and there's a reason for it? And so getting the buy-in from that group. So we will typically not just drive things down, you know, from our operations team down to the field. We include, you know, people within that process into it. So there'll be captains in the field, you know, that represent kind of each of the regions, that we bring them along on the journey as well, you know, with us. And then we're getting their feedback at the same time. So it's not just kind of one-sided our view. It's actually a real-time view for the people that are actually ringing the register and dealing with the customers each day.
Yeah. And just digging into that a little more, can you maybe share a time when you scaled a new strategy and some of the challenges that you faced when you were scaling? And then obviously, you know, what made it successful overall?
Yeah. So usually where you're most successful is where you put enough time into it. You're not rushing something to get out. You know, so, and we're like our typical, when we're piloting, that pilot could be 90 days to 6 months plus trying to do it, to really kind of get a read on it. But it depends on like what it is that you're trying to do. Where we're not successful is when we have to rush something out and you're doing it in under 90 days, because you can't really get a read for what's going on. And you can't even get a read on the seasonality of the business and what that impact is on what you're doing, you know, into it. So typically our pilots, we like them to be a minimum of 12 months when we're going through it. Now, during that pilot, we may start in a small group of stores that we're doing the pilot in, but over that 12 months, we start to kind of grow that base before we start to roll it out at scale.
Perfect, thank you. And Gareth, from your side, what do you think, retailers should do when it comes to testing and validating before, rolling out?
I mean, I think Bill probably touched on most of the points that I would say there. I guess the only additions would be that quite often we see retailers that have got multiple pilots going on at the same time, and the danger of the overlap between two pilots, and then where do you attribute the improvement or the lack of improvement? And how do those two things fit together? So I think having some sort of orchestration of all the pilots becomes important. And if a retailer is trying too many different things at one time, and that can really mess things up. And then I think making sure the pilot's kind of big enough and that people have got skin in the game for it to be a success. I think, again, if you run too many pilots and they're too small and people don't know about them, and it doesn't really matter if they're successful or if they're not successful because they're so small, then I think, again, you've almost set yourself up to maybe not fail, but definitely not succeed from the start. So I think you kind of want to make sure that everyone's committed early on to success.
Bill, so I guess just in terms of moving from strategy, moving it from head office into stores, where do you see is usually the biggest disconnect?
I think the biggest disconnect is when you're not communicating to the people effectively in advance and during the process, from going through the pilot to kind of getting it to full scale and deploying it, and then probably bringing them along with, well, how are we doing with this? So we tend to be probably much more have much more visibility throughout the group and the key kind of areas within the organization as to what we're doing and what we're seeing. And some of that comes not just from us having information that we post up regularly, that people can look ahead to, not only kind of general tasks that are going on, but something that we're trying to deploy, like this, that, hey, and this is what's going on, and it's in these stores and it's in these platforms, for us. And here's some of the things that we're seeing, from this, and this is some of what you can expect, as it comes into your stores and your platform along with it. But then those basically region captains, because they're brought along in the journey, on the regular region calls, we ask them to take kind of 5 or 10 minutes just to provide their own update, into the group and ask questions, into it. And we really think that helps us to get better buy-in from the field for all of these things, that we're doing, because it's not just another thing, that they have to do. And they're getting a perspective from their peers and not just somebody sitting at the head office.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you. And Gareth, from your side, what does TruRating data tell you about, execution and for consistency across stores?
I mean, what it generally shows us is that when things are first launched, there is a lack of consistency. So we often see a 40 percentage point gap between kind of the best performing and lowest performing stores when new initiatives are rolled out. And if you don't know that information and you take an overall average of, this is how well we're doing, then I think you lose a lot of that it's linked to what the impact is. So I think the starting point is that focusing on consistency is often a key part of any pilot, of actually rolling out and making sure that things are being done how you want them to be done, especially when it comes to initiatives that involve humans, right? Like if it's more of a system-based one, then you can maybe have more confidence, but especially where you're involving members of staff in this, then naturally compliance and training become a bigger deal, and that takes longer to roll out. And then I think to Bill's point about hearts and minds, a lot of what we do with our data is showing members of staff in the shop floor the value that they have and how much what they do is noticed by customers and how big an impact they have. And I think that's a big part of how we win the hearts and minds, is not just saying this is something that's been decreed and this is how you're doing at it and you need to do better, but more, when you do this thing well, this is what customers notice, and this is how much more they spend, or how much more they are likely to convert, or how much more often they come back because of the things that you are doing. And that's that I think then is almost a positive reinforcement of getting that conversion to be better. So yeah, I think our position is with our data is to get it out to the people that are making the difference in store, so that they can continue to improve.
Yeah, brilliant. I guess staying on that topic, Bill, how much do staff kind of comfort levels affect whether an initiative lands well in store?
It's probably one of the kind of top 5 or 10 things that you have to do when you go through this, because they do have to be comfortable with what you're doing. And think about the nature of kind of getting customer experience information from them, getting them out of the mindset that this is a gotcha, that we're going to kind of catch you doing something wrong, in this. It's more of, we're going to catch you doing something right, and we're going to help recognize you, with this. But also, the things that we find that are the opportunity is, these are the things that we're going to do to help you, to improve it, not just kind of get the hammer out and every time somebody kind of has like a bad rating, kind of score with it. But to try to so definitely they're getting down to the lowest level within the store to get their comfort level as to what we're doing, and why it's really important.
Brilliant, thank you. And Gareth, from your side then, how do you think about the link between adoption, execution, and then customer response as well?
Well, I think from how we measure things, there's definitely, I guess, a compliance angle of, is this thing being done, whatever it might be. And then there's, how important is it that this thing is done? So, we're measuring two things really. We're measuring whether or not a new initiative has rolled out, and then we're measuring whether or not that initiative is successful at its ultimate aim, which is generally improve conversion, improve average basket size, improve the customer experience such that people come back more often. So those are kind of, I guess, the two things that we're measuring. And then when we do see that sort of execution gap that I was talking about, what we're really then focused on is, why is it that some stores manage to do this well versus some stores struggle? And is there an underlying reason for that maybe we've missed, that we need to take into account? So as much information as we can give to kind of quickly reinforce whatever behaviors we're trying to do, or to tweak the behavior so that we can roll out. I think we are doing a new initiative. We want to be in a position to be able to start feeding back results in the first week of that initiative, and say, this is how we might need to tweak slightly or pivot slightly, rather than we're going to roll a pilot out and then wait 12 weeks to then say this hasn't been successful, because that's a wasted 12 weeks. So yeah, as much as possible, we're trying to get early results on everything, so that we can make things a success by kind of iterating throughout the pilot, not just fixing a pilot and rolling forever.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Bill, obviously Paradies operates in the airports, so local context matters in a very different way. How much does the traveller mix, regional, or the airport partnership shape your overall strategy?
So it has to, it's one of the kind of the foundational questions that we have to ask with anything that we do, because there are regional differences, there are country differences that are in it. And I'll use just the makeup of the airport kind of itself, and you have domestic and international kind of travel, and even like there some of the international travel, especially in Canada, you have trans-border travel, which is kind of this in between stage that's in it. And they can't necessarily, get the same experience across the stores, or they may not have the freedom to go to multiple stores, within an airport. They're just kind of limited to that terminal or that limited number of gates that they can get to. So you have to consider it. You also have to consider the language barrier, that may affect what you're trying to do, in here. And will it, are the questions that we're asking, are they going to be effective if people can't understand them, and what we're doing? So definitely the traveler mix has to play a factor into it. But that traveler mix, some of it is we have to look at it by time of day or day of the week. So you have your business and leisure travel. So the business travel tends to be kind of that Monday through Thursday, and it's an earlier kind of travel with it, versus the leisure travel that once or twice a year that they're traveling, or it tends to be more things that happen over a weekend. So the dynamics of what happens within our business and what our customers are looking for by day of the week, time of the day, or even kind of seasonally makes kind of a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Gareth, from your side then, what can retailers learn when they start looking at customer behavior through a more local lens?
I mean, I think almost the kind of point I was making in the last answer about trying to understand the differences about why one store might score a certain way and another one might do differently, or why an initiative lands in one place and doesn't land in another. That regionality, or I'm not sure even if it is regionality, if it's much more a local thing in most cases, where that local store is located. And this isn't just thinking about travel now, but just, I guess, retail in general. What's the mix of consumers that are going to come into that store? What's their income levels? How price sensitive are they? What's the competition nearby? How far have they traveled to get to the store? Those can all have an impact on conversion numbers. They can have an impact on likely average basket size. There can be so many things that are kind of things that happen outside of the store that can impact what happens inside the store before you even get into the things of what you can do within the store to either maximize, that sort of starting position. So I think if you don't take those into consideration, then you just get very varied results, and you can't, you're almost in danger of incorrectly associating a whole set of behaviors or outcomes to things that are going on in store, when actually you need to take into account what's going on outside the store. So, in the travel example that Bill's talking about, that kind of mix of travelers, what other stores are nearby, what have we also noticed? Like if you're in departures about to go on a holiday, or if you're in arrivals and massively jet lagged, all those things can have an impact, right, on the experience that you have, and how helpful you thought the staff were, or kind of how comfortable you are with queue times, or how more likely you are to storm out. All those things can be impacted by things that happened long before you walked in the store. So yeah, we definitely try to take as many of those different things into consideration as possible. Not only because if you don't take those into consideration, then I think from a store point of view, those things get thrown up first. We can't be treated like everyone else because we're different. We're so unique. And I think if you can show a store manager, look, here's another set of stores that are very like you, they have very similar kind of preconditions to you, then you can have a much more kind of targeted and slightly grown up conversation about why there's a difference between the two stores, because you've taken all those other things into consideration. I think if you don't take those things into consideration, you lose a lot of confidence as to whether you actually understand what's going on in that particular store. So yeah, we try to take as much contextual data in as we can about the location of the store, the time of day, the busyness of the store, the type of customers coming into that store. And there's a lot of data out there about those sort of things, right, that you can bring in and include as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Bill, I'd love to understand from your side how, operations and marketing best partner together when rolling out a new strategy.
So probably a little bit different than most kind of retailers or hospitality kind of companies, where that our marketing team is really there kind of marketing the company versus marketing promotions within the stores. So the promotional aspect, the pricing, those things that are going on, that's handled between kind of our kind of retail operations group and the merchandising group, kind of defining what those strategies will be. So more of what we link together with marketing on is how we use the data, like this, and the information that we ask to, that we're asking or that we need to ask, that helps us to differentiate ourselves between our competition, in the airports, that has us looked at more favorably as kind of new, existing renewal contracts come up, for the business within the airport, so that we can either kind of grow our existing base, pick up new base, want it away from our competition. So I think that the bigger piece of it that we do with marketing that's helpful is are there specific questions for the marketing team that they need to have for our business developers and our chief development officer to be able to use in those discussions with the airports for RFPs, or the panel discussions that they may participate in on industry conferences. But that's probably for our organization, how we link together with the marketing team. And what's been incredibly impactful to the group is, again, we were not measuring kind of our customer experience in a meaningful way for forever with the organization. Now, we're getting hundreds of thousands of responses every week, now, and we will generate over 9 million responses, in a year. That's pretty incredible, especially when our marketing team is looking to get, it's like, we have a question we just want to get about 1,000 to 2,000 responses. Well, we could turn those responses around to them very, very quickly, versus the path that they would have, where they would try to put together, some like local or regional panels of people and just have some discussions with consumers, but some of those consumers may not even be kind of regular travelers through the airport.
That's brilliant. And yes, you do have a fantastic number of responses, so well done to you and the team. Gareth, I'd love to understand from your side what customer feedback from retailers are trying to understand from marketing and promotions.
I mean, I think generally there's the sort of straightforward, for a very specific promotion running in a very specific store type of initiatives, where really you're looking at, I guess, a compliance angle of, has the promotion that I think has been rolled out in all my stores actually been rolled out in my stores? So that's a straightforward, you can use customer data from our point of view just to check a compliance angle that previously you'd have to have people going around to stores and taking photos or whatever else to make sure that it actually been rolled out. Then I think there's an awareness piece of, did a customer even notice the promotion? Did they understand the promotion? So, if I think of a lot of those kind of meal deal bundle promotions, quite often customers are a bit confused as to what's in, what's out, and did it really work? So, I think awareness and understanding is quite a big one. And then I think the third one generally is kind of influence. Did it impact on behavior? Did it cause them to buy something they weren't planning to buy? Did it actually bring net new money in, or did it just pull forward spend that maybe they were going to spend anyway? And did we effectively just give away margin? So I think those are the three things very much on a very specific promotion or marketing initiative that's being rolled out. But then to Bill's point about kind of that broader brand marketing, a lot of the questions that we ask in that area are more about understanding customer perceptions, and that can be customer perceptions of a brand, it can be customer perceptions of a region of the country, it can be how customers are feeling about kind of bigger trends that are going on. Are they shopping more with a list in a grocery store is a key one. Kind of how you get at how how more price sensitive customers are becoming, or how much they're having to think about the money that they've got to spend. So there's lots of things that we do with marketing which are probably less about that very specific measurement of a particular piece of media or promotion or marketing, and more about how to understand a set of customers so that you know how to market to them in the future.
Perfect, thank you. Bill, I'd love to understand, since working with TruRating, what's something that you've seen more clearly than before you were using us?
All right. So I said early on that we're recognized for our customer service, so we're pretty proud of it, and we think to ourselves that we do a really, really good job. What was shocking to us was I guess the number of times that we don't greet the customer when they come into the store, into it. Now I think we're doing it more than 80% of the time, which is incredible. But then we have a number of stores that it's below 50% of the time, and then the information that stood out to us right away, into it, was that when we get the responses, so the people that like us are spending $3 more a transaction than the ones that don't like us, and the ones that don't like it's because we didn't greet them. That specific question, were you greeted, in there? So that by itself, that stood out in a big way, and it was something that we could actually take back to our teams to say, not just a general statement, hey, we got to do a better job of greeting. It was, you're doing a great job in these stores, into it. We have an opportunity in these stores. So you need to recognize and encourage those that are doing well. You need to go spend some time to kind of find out like what's going on. Look at the schedule. And we could get it so we could actually see down to, through the heat map, to the time of the day of the week, on the good and the bad, that was happening in there. It was very impactful right away, for us. And what's actually been interesting, to it, and I can't attribute like all of this that it's going through the pilot that we did with TruRating, and then to kind of get through to the deployment, that started last year. But we've seen a marked trend change in our average transaction growth since we started this journey with TruRating. It's been, and I truly believe that it was the information that we were getting was giving us the right information to the right audience to be able to go and actually to have a plan and to take an action that could influence, the performance that we were having in our stores.
That's brilliant. We're very, very happy to help, Bill. And Gareth, from your side then, where do you see the biggest difference between having data and having useful visibility?
So I think that it's very easy to ask lots of different questions about lots of different parts of the business and produce lots of stats and put them all in a very pretty kind of dashboard and heat maps. And you can flood so much data at people if you want. There's very few people that I ever talk to in retail that say I haven't got enough data. Most of the time it's I've got too much data. I don't think I understand the data that I've got. I don't know how to use the data I've got. I'm sure there is value in there. I just don't know how to unlock it, and I don't know what to focus on. And I can't just give all this data to my stores, because otherwise they're sitting there with 10 different KPIs and they don't know where to focus. So I think it's a balancing act of either having a good enough kind of past knowledge to know what to ask and what's likely to be the issue, and to focus in on that, or to start with a kind of very broad brush of these are all the things we want to measure and understand from a customer point of view, but very quickly you have to get up to a point of saying these are the things that we're going to focus on improving, to Bill's point about the greeting. So once you can get down to these are the 2 or 3 things that really matter to customers, these are the things that sort of move the needle on revenue. These are the ones that have got the biggest opportunity to improve. And these are the ones that we actually think we can improve, either very quickly through training or things we do in store, or maybe over a slightly longer period by things that we do with pricing or stock availability or whatever it might be. Then I think you have to commit to making an improvement of something. And I think too often we see people stop at as long as I've got the information, as long as I'm collecting the information and distributing the information, then magically things will get better. And unfortunately, that's rarely the case. You have to go that, once you've got the data, you have to then go the next stage, right? Which is coach the teams, understand why they're struggling, figure out how to help them, give them the confidence to improve, reward the ones and and acknowledge the ones that are doing well. And that's really where you get the impact. You don't get any revenue growth until you make use of the data to make a change. So from our point of view, it is a balancing act. You have to start by, you don't want to have a complete blind spot. So you have to start wide enough so that you kind of cover all the things that may or may not be going well or may not matter to customers. But very quickly, you have to be able to get to a point where you say, okay, these are the 2 or 3 things that for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, we're going to focus in on and really try and drive a different behavior. And that's where you see the usability bit come through.
Perfect. Thanks, Gareth. And we're getting to the end now. So Bill, I think just a final question for me to you is, as you come to an end of an incredible career in retail operations, what's one lesson that you think retail leaders should hold on to when they're trying to deploy a successful strategy?
Yeah, I think that it was probably what I kind of talked about at the beginning, is that you've got to bring your teams along on the journey, with you. That if you're just forcing something down and it's just another kind of task or another thing, but they really don't understand why you're doing it and what's the benefit, to them and to it, but what's the benefit to the organization, by doing it. But it's that communication through the various levels, field leaders, corporate leaders, but as well as kind of those store teams, is probably the most important thing. And we weren't always great at doing that. We thought we were really good at doing it until we actually started asking the questions, to the people that tended to be after the fact into it. So kind of, it definitely kind of changed the way that we've kind of led all of this pretty much over the last 15 years, in doing things. And we've been pretty successful, at implementing new technologies, new strategies, new initiatives. But it's a very disciplined approach, and it's not always a popular approach within the organization, because in a lot of cases they're wanting to do things faster, or they want to do more things, and Gareth, he mentioned it early on. It's like you could have a lot of too many different things going on, too many different pilots, too many different deployments of things going on at the same time, that it's too much noise, for people to have to deal with.
Brilliant. Well, I just want to say a massive thank you to you both. This has been a really incredible conversation, so I appreciate your time. And thanks everyone for joining in and listening in. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.